Hello, this is George Roberts. Matthew Sarles is here also. Are you there,
Hi,
Matthew?
I'm here.
He's here.
Can everyone hear us?
Bunch of yeses. Okay, well, uh, I'm going to kick it off, and I wanted to thank you for attending, taking your time to want to find out more about what we're trying to do and where we're going. And the way this will work is I'm going to kind of give you the introduction to what we're about and where we're trying to go. And Matthew is then going to demonstrate some of the features that we have shown on that release summary that you can see there in front of you. So some housekeeping. Questions and comments when you registered, really appreciate those. And we'll be getting back to you with answers to some of those tomorrow. We were getting ready for this event, and so wasn't possible to kind of do a good job in responding to those. Same thing with the questions. We asked questions of you, and you filled them all in, so that was very helpful. We'll be answering as many questions today as we can in the minutes that we have. I only set this up for 45 minutes. We could run over a little bit, but we're hoping that we wouldn't do that. Give you a little Ron Brown update. I heard from Ron just a little bit ago, and he was on his way home from the hospital. For those of you who may not know who Ron is, he's our colleague, and he was diagnosed with multiple myeloma, and so he's been in the Buffett Cancer Center for stem cell replacement, and it's all gone pretty well. And he's on his way home right now. Maybe he's there by this time. So things are looking good for him, and the doctors are very optimistic. I asked Ron, since he knows the theme of this was 2018, HGSI for 2018. I said, what are you going to do? And he says, I'm going to do seminars in Omaha, Nebraska. So Ron is planning to seek out the idea of doing some sessions in Omaha, and so you'll probably be hearing from him. He'll be feeling you out on that whole idea. So from Palos Verdes, California, to Omaha, Nebraska. So we're glad to hear about Ron. Be glad to have him back. He can't make it to this particular webinar, but he's with us in spirit. So some background about this whole thing that we're talking about here. On the top of the list is called Custom HGSI Solutions. And what that's all about was Matthew and I have been pondering over the various questions and things that we've been asked to do over the past. Some of the reasons why people have stopped subscribing, others have come into the subscription system, but there's a variety of people out there with different needs. A lot of people would say, oh, HGSI is too hard to learn, takes too much time, documentation is too hard to work with, too many filters, views, combos, smart groups are sitting in front of us when we install it. Don't know what to do with all of those, so it's very busy. And one that was interesting is we would like more solutions to go with those tools. And so when we thought about what solutions really meant, is we all, including me and probably Matthew and most everybody, one way or another, we build lists and then manage lists. So we took solutions to mean that people would like to sort of get lists from us that have some degree of background behind them in terms of the strategy to bring that solution forward, that list forward. So the idea was that, well, how could we go about doing that without trying to do it all on the desktops of the users by telling you, here's some more tools, here's some more things that you have to do. Well, that led us to the idea that what we really needed to do was take HGSI and put it up on our server so that we could run HGSI on the server. Now, that doesn't mean we're going to head in the direction of a cloud system where people access HGSI, through the internet. That's not going to happen with HGSI. But what it can do is it can make it very much easier for us to do the kind of things that we need to do when we're trying to produce a solution. Then what we come out of that solution with, which again is usually lists, then we can just ship them to you. And you're going to get a sample of that with two items that are on that list there on the release summary. One is called the HGSI Top 50, and the other one is a HGSI Option Volume. Those two categories of information, those two lists, well, there's more than two, but what they are is they're actually a form of a custom solution. Whatever had to be done to produce them was done off the server, put into the database, and shows up when you do your update. So the interesting thing about that is, as you thought to think about it, you can look at strategies and for solutions that other people have produced. And so maybe some of the things that we could do, example of somebody who's already in our system is like Charles Kirkpatrick. Kirkpatrick's system of building lists are based on some fundamental things that he does. When he does them, he applies entry signals, exit signals, alerts, tells you when to go in, when to come out. Many of these solution things that we're going to look at doing going forward into 2018 has that characteristic to it. When we started thinking about that, okay, we could do those, for our current users. But what it also means is that we can now, in fact, offer up solutions to other businesses. If you like the language of business to business, we can now proceed down that particular trail where we put a solution in and, for another business, and that business may not want it to be something that's available to all our regular HGSI customers, so you wouldn't necessarily see it. Or they may want to have it there and offer it to you for whatever it is they use in the way of their own fee structure. So that's a kind of a quick background to how we got to what we got to and where we are right now and where we're trying to go. We'll still continue to do these sophisticated tools that we do, and that's not going to change because we wind up using the same tools to do these custom solutions. Only in some cases we have to add some customized stuff to it that's just not on the PC. So as you think about that and you have questions about that, you can kind of post them, put them forward, and we'll try to go with it. If you're a registered investment advisor, you're a likely candidate, or you could be a good candidate for this. I've had 2-3 inquiries already from that point of view. So some people tend to call something like this that we're doing white labeling. It's really not like that. HGSI's label will still be there like it is right now. Wherever these solutions go, so does HGSI, only it's got special stuff in it for those kinds of customers. So another part that was really looked at hard, and while Matthew was doing all of the technical stuff, I went ahead and started looking at all of the stuff that we were doing with trying to do the documentation and what have you. And so on your screen right now, you're seeing what is the online help version of the help system. In the past, you only had it in a different form, and it wasn't up to date, and it had gotten a little bit of age crept into it. So we, looked at all of that, and we came up with, I needed some new tools to do it, and so we went to Adobe came up with Adobe Robohelp, and it's a very interesting, sophisticated thing that lets you produce your documentation in a variety of forms. So the one that you're seeing on the screen right now, that's considered a responsive help system, and what that simply means is if I go over here and I move this thing around, it's going to change in its form and shape, and so you'd be able to see things if you were running it on a laptop that's got a small screen. You can bring it down into a different size, and you're still going to get to see it. At the same time, we know that you may be all sitting on an airplane and you need some help. So I'm just going to drag it from another window. Here's our traditional look from the Windows help system that you've seen to date, and so you'll have both. If you're unable to get on the net but you need to get to the help system, you'll get it because it's all here. Let's see what else on this subject. You're going to find when I first put this out that there are some placeholders in place for different things. So, like for example, the Learning Center will be the place. We're going to bring that off of the website and put it here. From where you normally would be going looking. And so you'll find that we're putting everything into this new help. So you'll see placeholders like this showing up from time to time, less and less as I continue to bang away at this thing. There'll be a whole section on getting started. You're looking right now at the what's new. Under here is the HGSI tools. You can see it just collapses up nicely. But if I go down here, you'll start to see some of these showing up. So like if you have something on your mind about installation, there's going to be a topic in there for installation. If you're interested in, I don't know, let's just say the designer, you come in here, you're going to learn things about what's in the designer. And so then there's a whole bunch of topics that go on with the designer. So this should become a very good source of information. It'll be much more timely because I can update it anytime. It doesn't depend on a release going out for you to get the changes and the updates to it. And let's see, anything else that I needed to kind of front load you with here. We will be restarting something that we did a little bit back when we first put up the VPA and stuff like that. We call them the Tech Talks. And so we will be reinstating those. We'll be doing them, let's just say bi-monthly, at least twice a month. There'll be single topic talks on some subject, and we'll solicit information from you as to what tech talks you'd like to have us do. These will not be about investing per se, but about HGSI tools and how they can be best used, or how, or things that you're trying to do with them that you can't do with them. So those are going to come back online to try to help again with improving the documentation and understanding of how to use HGSI. So I think did I think I miss anything, Matthew, that you're going to?
A couple of comments. This new release of the software we're going to ship it this weekend. It's going to ship on Saturday, so it's not available just yet. This is a preview. This seminar is being recorded. The replay will be sent out as email to all the attendees, and it'll be on YouTube and available from the website. So if you can't stay for the whole thing here, you will be able to get a recording. The new version is still Windows 7 32-bit. Yes, we're not changing this. We don't actually have a database need to switch to 64-bit, so we're sticking with Windows 7 32-bit.
So I'm going to switch this over to you, Matthew, if you're ready for it.
Sure, let's do that.
There you go.
Okay, so can you see my screen?
Yep, nice and clear.
So, so in this new release, we've done a bunch of things so that we can actually run HGSI on the server and use it to generate data and gather data, collect data, and then republish the data, which, for a desktop app, it was kind of a big change for us. And so the first big piece of it that is in this release that we're rolling out is we've added this new HGSI custom groups, and it shows up in the designer, it shows up in the group database. They're blue, unlike the smart groups, which are green. The custom groups are entirely generated on the server and downloaded to the client. There's no computation done for these on the local machine. And as a result of this, we've added a new feature to the designer so that you can manage your group subscriptions, because we hope to expand these groups to encompass portfolio trading systems as well as other forms of data. And so the idea was not every customer wants to see every one of these things, every one of these smart groups. We have dozens of smart groups now that are very specific to trading methodologies. And the idea behind this new manage group subscriptions, which you get to from the file menu in the designer, is that you can turn off these groups if you don't want them on your local machine. And so you can unsubscribe to smart groups and custom groups. Now, when you first install this new version this weekend, the default is you will only be subscribed to the HGSI starter smart group. And so all of the smart groups that you've been seeing before will be unsubscribed to start with, as to try to clean up the initial look of the product. And so older customers will probably need to go in here and re-add all these smart groups if you're still looking for the various categories of smart groups. The custom groups, we only have 2 top-level custom groups right now, but this is going to expand probably quickly because we don't have to release the software anymore to do it. So I'm gonna, and we'll look at this more in a minute, but let's take a quick look at what these custom groups are. So the first in the big custom group, Ron has been doing this GIR 50 now for a while, and the way he generates it is he uses our group inclusion report against a bunch of smart groups, and stocks that show up in more than one of these categories get stuck on the list, and then he takes the top 50 of them. And a lot of our customers are following this process, but it's a lot of work. You've got to update the database, you have to do the GIR 50, and then you have to save that as a group later. And so one of the first things that we're doing here with this HGSI custom groups is we have implemented the GIR 50, and we're calling it HGSI Top 50 just because we thought it had a better sound to it. And so the idea is the server is now generating twice a day, once at 7:30 to get our second database update, and then again the next morning with the final database update. It does essentially Ron's GIR 50 process and records the results. And we've been running this on the server now since March, and every day it generates the lists and takes the top 50, and all of these groups will be downloaded into HGSI for you. If you don't want them, you can unsubscribe using this unsubscribe managed group subscription thing. But if you do want them, They're just raw groups. None of the groups have indexes. They don't take any computational time. If you miss a day, they will be here. We're going to keep at least a year on the database, on the server. So the way it works is the most recent one is always in this folder as well as in the by date. Each one of these groups, now this is one of the new key features to the custom groups, is custom groups can have reports. And so if you select a custom group, there's this new report button. It opens up a report. And for these GIR 50 style groups, it is the group inclusion report. And so you can actually go back and see and this was the group inclusion report from the 3rd. And it's ran every morning. The time zone on this, the server's in West Coast. So that's really 7:30-ish a.m. And this is the stocks that were on the list from the end of the day on the 2nd. And so all of those reports are available, as well as the lists themselves for each one of the days. And then with this, you can easily do a couple of things. And the big one is you can run the group inclusion report of the group inclusion reports. And so you can find out, if you bring up the GUR and clear it, you can select, say, all the days in October, and then here's NVIDIA showed up 15 times so far in October, and applied materials. So you can see the list of you can easily do the group inclusion report of the group inclusion reports, which is the key mining technique that Ron's been working on. And with the historical server data, you don't have to do nearly as much work to get that kind of result. The other thing you'll notice is the group inclusion report, we have modified a little bit. We've added the industry to the group inclusion report. So as a result, you no longer have to select all the industries in order to get them included into a group inclusion report, which I think is a big win. The other win we've done is all the reports now have a new save report to file option. And so it used to be before, when you would do a group inclusion report, you would select what to gather the counts from, and then you would get presented with a save dialog, and you'd have to name the file every time, even if you didn't want to keep the data. And so now, instead of doing it that way, it is now an option. And so if you don't check the save report to file, we just use a temporary file name every time. And so you can get the report instantly. If you decide, once you've generated the report, you'd like to save it, you can just use your browser's save page function. Or you can obviously rerun the report with the checkbox enabled. And it remembers that checkbox, so if you like the old style where it saves every report, you can still do that. But it speeds up the whole workflow for these reports across the whole product. Let's see what else. So the top 50 is essentially Ron's GIR 50, done automatically on the server, downloaded every day. It does get updated at 7:30 at night and then 7:30 the next morning. And so it won't be available with the very first database update. And so you can still generate the GIR 50 the old-fashioned way. But if you can wait till 7:30 Eastern, we'll have it on the server, and when you update, it'll download the new one. The other thing we've implemented is and this one doesn't, we're not doing a historical. This is something Ron keyed on, where he was taking last month's Chicago Board of Options, the top 300 most active, and he was downloading their Excel spreadsheet, extracting the symbols, and then he would make it into a group. And so we're actually now doing this on the server. We're doing exactly what Ron was doing, and there's a video on YouTube that he walks through this process, but we're doing it on the server automatically. Now, this is last month's most active options, and it too has a report. And you can see this is for September 2017. We also are extracting the most active options from the Option Clearing Corporation. They have a big pile of data that they make available, and it's kind of hard to parse. And so we actually have server code that reads their strange format. We can give you the URLs that we're using, but it also is an option volume thing, but they also include ETFs options. And so the lists are slightly different, but these are just a couple of, I'd call them fishing ponds. They're high liquidity stocks that, if you're looking at trading something, these are good candidates because they've got heavy amounts of option volume. And so, those are updated. They're always 1 month old, so they generally update. The OCC list updates on the 1st of the month. The CBOE publishes 3 business days after the last close of the month, and sometimes they're late. So if I would not be surprised if that list does not update as often as you'd like it to. And we're probably going to add more of these kinds of lists. Let's see, what else that I need to go over. So that's basically the way the HGSI custom groups look now. But like I said, these groups, they're entirely generated on the server. They're generated using HGSI. They can be richly complicated with filtering and pretty much anything we can do with a smart group. But we can also keep history of them, and so you don't have to worry about missing a day. We may publish these in other ways as well. We could start making some of this available on the net so you wouldn't even have to use the software. It's going to be the major theme of how we publish new data in the future. Let's see. Save the report.
Hey, Matthew. Can you demonstrate the manage groups? So, taking them out, putting them in. It goes quick.
Sure, let's do that. So with the new managed groups, by default we're going to start people out without all the smart groups. So if you decide you want all those smart groups, well, here right now, if you look at it, I only have HGSI starters. My smart groups are completely empty, and so I need to go in and I can subscribe to all of them, and then it has to rebuild them. By unsubscribing from the smart groups, it will actually speed up your nightly update, but not significantly. It's a minor amount of speed. And then once you've added them, you will then have all the smart groups that you've been used to, which are what's being used to build the top 50. If you look at one of these top 50 reports, like for instance this one, this STM was in these smart groups. It was in a total of 16 of these smart groups, and this guy was in a total of 12. And the idea is the more smart groups it appears, the more smart groups the stock appears, the more interesting the stock is, the more accumulation it's under, the more breakouts. Now, one interesting thing that I don't think a lot of people realize, we've had this feature, it's actually in the shipping HGSI. If you put a symbol name in this search box in the designer, it does a search in the group you're in, but if you check this little box on the side for search groups for stock, it changes this list over here to show you every single group that this symbol appears in. Now, this only works when you type an actual symbol name, but it can be a real interesting way for when you see a stock on a list, any list. You know, obviously these top 50 lists are a good source, but any of our other lists in the future, if you're interested in seeing more about a stock, finding out where it's in can be really interesting. And this interactive designer tool, and this is actually in the HGSI you have now, you can see that these ETFs can, this stock is a component of these ETFs, so they own shares in it. You can see what industry groups it's in. You can also see with the historical top 50 every day that it showed up in a group inclusion report, which is a really powerful way of visualizing what it's in. And then if you have the smart groups, you can see all the smart groups it appears in today. You can also see if it shows up in any of your own personal user groups with this little box. And then when you're done with it, you can just turn the box off and the list will go back to the full normal list. And that's really it for the managed group subscriptions. If you change your mind, you know, suppose you don't want a few of these, you can just take them out and it'll rebuild. It doesn't take very long to change. There's some index computation, but that's about it. And then those smart groups will be gone, depending on you know, it took those smart groups out. But if you ever want them back, you can always go to the managed group subscriptions and add them. It's just a way of narrowing your focus.
And Matthew, you might mention that they don't really need the smart groups to be there for the top 50 to perform.
So that's the other thing. With the server generating the top 50, you don't have to have any of the smart groups on your local machine. The server does all the math and does all the groups. So you don't have to babysit. You know, the old way of doing the group inclusion report, you would have to go into the group inclusion report. You'd have to clear everything. You'd have to load the selection. There's a lot, you know, there's a lot of steps involved into making the group inclusion report. But when you get them from the server, you don't have to do any work. They just appear. So some of the custom groups in the future, we're going to have custom groups that implement various trading systems. We're going to probably start with the Charlie Kirkpatrick's trading systems, which we have smart groups that sort of do, and these portfolio custom groups will not only have, they won't have new folders every day. They'll have folders every day when there's trades to be made, buys and sells. But they'll also have reports that update every day with graphs and charts that show the performance of that trading system. So it's kind of a portfolio in a can, you know, an instant portfolio, where you see an implementation of a technical trading system that you could follow without having to do quite so much work to manage all the filters and to find the stocks and then to track the performance of those stocks. And that isn't part of this release yet, but the architecture behind it is all here. We're still working on reports are constantly a problem for us. um, let's see. So this new release, in addition to that, has we have we've added a couple little minor things. We've added in our group performance analysis, if you the report now gives the standard deviation, which is a nice little extra bonus. And the interesting thing is you can run the group performance analysis against the historical top 50 folders. And so you can see, if you'd have bought this top 50 folder, what the performance would have been. Now, normally these groups, you can't tell who was on top, but with the custom report, you can actually see the exact order that they were in. We still don't have a way of tying that sort order into the group itself, but this is a start in that direction, so you can know who was on top then and can work from that. It's kind of interesting. We have a few new data fields. We have some new force index. We have a new force index scaled, which is basically the same old force index, only it's scaled by the 30-day moving average volume. And so the idea is that instead of having the force index moves more relative to the volume. We also have added this scaling option to the charting. So it's part of the, it's a new section in the charting indicator, this scale by average volume. So you can scale the force index values by the average volume of the stock, which gets, it makes the force index work a little more volume. It takes out the volume spiking effect to some degree. Jeffrey asked for this, so we added it in. That's one of the new features. We have a few new warehouse columns that I think people will like, including a couple of warehouse columns for, so we have a new field for securities in industry, and so for every stock that's in that has an industry group, you can see how many securities are in that industry group. We also have this new securities in the index, so that you can see how many stocks are in an index, and that only works on indexes. Securities in industry only work on securities that are in industries. There's more help in the online help. And with the help moving online now, when you press the help button, it'll actually go to the web and bring up the help, unless your computer is offline, in which case it'll bring up the Windows local help. We've added a bunch of volume point of control fields to the database that I think will be really useful for trying to figure out a better range of what a good volume point of control is, which is a really good point for figuring out if a stock is overpriced or underpriced. We've added a percent 52-week range, which is the close value as a percentage over the 52-week high and low. We've fixed a lot of bugs, a little annoying things here and there, and we've added two minor charting indicators that people have asked for, a whole moving average, which is it's just kind of a different weighted moving average, but there was no way to get anything close to it with what we had before. You can Google it for more more info, and we've also added Williams AD, which is a divergence indicator. It's a continuous running indicator that when it diverts from new highs, you can it's tradable. Um, One thing you will notice, we've changed the default font. For years and years, we've used MS Sans Serif 8, and this release we've gone to Tacoma 10, and so the fonts are smoother in all the windows, which should help make things a little more readable. I'm really pretty happy with it. In addition, all the dialogues have been tweaked a little bit, changed a little bit to make everything fit. And then the dialogue engine, one of the goals here in the next few months is to add the ability so you can actually set the DPI scaling personally. So if you'd like to run at 150%, we'll scale everything up. And this was the first half of that, this font switchover. That'll probably be happening sometime in 2018. As soon as we get more of this portfolio custom group stuff. Let's see. We have a new installer. We've switched the installer. The new installer should be a lot more friendly for users who run without administration privileges. So an administrator can install HGSI on a machine, and then a user account on that machine can run that HGSI. The new installer should be a lot more friendly in that regard, but it's not majorly different than the old one in any big way. We've sped up a few things to try to make things go a little faster.
Matthew, you may want to, I've been answering a whole bunch of things. You may want to just scan through. There's a few in there that are appropriate.
I'm going to take a look at it.
Yeah, they're appropriate for you to answer.
So the GURs, the historical top lists are sorted however you want to sort them, and so they're just lists. The report, though, is sorted by the number of groups that stock appeared in, and so the highest one is this, and then alphabetically by symbol is the secondary sort. So the 12s, Court beat Marvel Tech because C beats M. But then once you've got these groups, you can take them into the warehouse and sort them by any view that you're interested in, and that's the real strength here, is that you can run these top-down analysis against the top 50 without having to do all the work to build the top 50. The new software update will offer to install automatically, just like it always has. When you do an update, it'll say there's a new version. The very first time you do the upgrade from the current installer to the new installer, you will have to go through the install steps by hand, and you really shouldn't change any of the values. We can't make it silent like we normally do. It normally just updates and then goes on, but this change in our install setup, this first time you're going to have to next through the dialogues, and you really shouldn't change the directories it's trying to install to, because if you do, you could easily find you have 2 copies of stuff or you don't have anything. But that'll only be true this very first time. The next update after that, it'll be back to silently updating when you answer yes to the do you want to install the new update. And you don't have to install the new update. We're not forcing it. If you want to wait, if you're happy with what you're running now, we're not going to shove it down the pipe so that you have no choice. So yeah, the report is fixed, and it was generated on the server at the time in the day it was created, which is good because you can get this history. So if you go back to March 16th here, this report was ran Saturday morning. And you can see exactly what the world looked like on that day, without having to keep the questions. And the storage requirements for all of these custom groups, we were compressing everything from the start. So not only are we using HTML, but we're compressing it, so the storage requirements are very minimal. I think no one will have any real issues. It's not like we need 50 gigs of disk space here. These are the report files are very tiny because we're LZ4 compressing everything. So the day and time this will be ready to install. We're going to release it on Saturday, I believe, is the plan, but I'm not 100% sure what time on Saturday. If you install it, you really cannot go back a version. HGSI has always been pretty much a one-way ticket. You cannot read future views and filters and combos on previous versions of HGSI. So if you think you're going to want to go back a version, you need to do the HGSI backup first from the main toolbar and back up everything so that you can restore it and then roll the software back. Or perhaps uninstall all of HGSI, install the old version, and then do the restore onto it, is generally, I think, the recommended path. But we've also, we take a lot of time and effort to make sure that we're not trying to change everything all the time so that you're completely lost and broken. The app should feel and work pretty much the same as it always has. It's an incremental thing, not a, we're not doing like the Mozilla Firefox guys where they're breaking everything all the way across the board. So we hope it will be pretty painless. You cannot have both the old and the new at the same time installed. You can only have one. But with the backup facility, I think you can easily switch back if you had to between the two. But I don't really recommend that. It's much easier if you only concentrate on one version, and the software really won't allow you to install multiple copies since there's only one database. Once we release it, the old version will no longer be available to download. We will take it off the server. So if you want it, you should log in and save the installer before we roll this out on Saturday. Obviously, if you don't do that and you really want the old version, we could make it available. But when you log into your account on the website, under member services, there's a link to the software. If you right click on that and say save as and save it on your hard drive, it's just a little tiny installer. All your user groups stay, nothing changes in that regard. The same is true for all your views, filters, and combos. We haven't removed any views, filters, combos, or other features in those ways at all. Everything works the same as it is. We added a few new views, filters, and combos, but everything is backward compatible. Nothing should be affected. Okay, George, is there anything
I think you covered it pretty well, Matthew.
You can run copies on multiple machines. You just cannot run two different versions of HGSI on the same machine. way to set up a view to apply to all views. Now, we don't really have a way of doing that, but it's something we could look into, seeing what we can do to allow more mass editing of views. We'd have to talk about the specifics there, but I think one of the things, right now editing a view is a little painful, and we may be able to improve that aspect of it a little bit. So maybe you could save the columns and apply them to other views. Okay, I think that pretty much covers most of the core stuff. It's a lot to digest, but again, this is it's more an add-on than we haven't really rewritten the universe. Lots of things will work smoother. There are options that'll make things go easier as far as the user interface, but we haven't reworked every feature in a big way.
Right, and once the release is out and you've got it in your hands and using it, we're planning on having another little webinar where we can answer your questions that things you may have bumped into. Obviously, you'll send support to me anyway, but we'll be doing another one follow up on this after it's out for about a week.
I think the combination of the new HTML and web-based online help, which we'll be able to easily update much faster than we could before, along with some of these other new options, should help speed up some of the nightly process. Yeah, we're going to take over a bit more of the training video process. We're still a little new at this. This product is a lot more complicated than it ever was imagined to be.
Okay, Matthew, I think we got it covered.
Okay.
We did it in almost the right amount of time.
Yeah.
Well,
thanks for everyone.
Hope you enjoy the release, and I'll be watching to see if you have any problems over the weekend. Take care.